Hey, thanks so much for joining me. Today, we will be discussing over the next 30 minutes how to network during COVID-19 and what are some realistic goals you can have for each meeting. We'll next be discussing some common interview questions and how to avoid the most common mistakes people make when answering these questions. And also, as always, your Q&A. Thanks so much for joining, guys. My name is Tony Martin, and this is How to Get the Jobs Weekly Update. So if you don't know, everything started for me with a little blog called How to Get the Job.blog. So feel free to go there, check out some of my material, some of my articles. They'll let you get you familiar with my thought process on things. But of course, you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and certainly subscribe to my YouTube channel. When I first started doing this a while ago, it was just to help people get jobs, resume writing, interview techniques, things like that. And as I've expanded my social media platforms, I do different things in each one. So first, let me give you a little overview. If you go to Instagram and you follow me there, you're going to get daily tips around a weekly theme. For the past 2-3 weeks, I was doing emotional intelligence interview questions, what traits that those questions were exploring, and also some videos from time to time about how to avoid some common mistakes when interviewing in that type of forum. This week, it's all about networking, how to network during COVID-19. I've done LinkedIn weeks where it's about how to up your LinkedIn presence in your profile. So weekly daily tips on LinkedIn. So I try to make sure that the Instagram is kind of a daily feed, so that way you can get daily tips on there. So follow me there. And then Facebook and LinkedIn are more two platforms. I do Q&As on Wednesdays at 10 o'clock Central Standard Time on LinkedIn, and I do it here on Facebook and YouTube as well on Thursdays at 2 o'clock. And then the last thing, like I said, YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. All these videos get cross-posted over to YouTube, so if you're not able to catch something live or you don't want to miss something, you can subscribe there. There's the 5 or 6 minute videos, which are quick hits, maybe 3 or 4 tips on a certain topic. There's also HR tips over there if you're an HR professional and you're new to recruiting and just want to get better at it, and you want to figure out why you're asking certain questions and how to figure out how to really be responsive to your candidates. So all that stuff is over there. That's enough of the commercial for now. So with that, how do we network during COVID-19? Obviously, in traditional settings, we'd go networking by going to a happy hour, maybe a coffee with a colleague, maybe a seminar, some sort of conference, all those things. Well, as we know, those kind of things right now are put on hold because of social distancing and everything like that. So how do you really effectively network in this world of ours? Well, first of all, you got to utilize your social media platforms, okay? You got to utilize LinkedIn. You got to find events that are free most of the time that you can attend, like this. So if you're on something like this, I don't have a problem with you putting who you are and putting on the comments section on the right-hand side or below, saying, hey, look, here's who I am, here's my background, because who knows? Tonight, tomorrow, maybe someone reads that and they go, oh, I'm looking for someone like that, and they might just reach out to you. So utilize the things that are already available to you. Join some professional groups. If you're a project manager, I always use this example because I'm a certified PMP. There's always regional chapters of that group, and because right now we can't meet face-to-face, we are doing Zoom meetings and things like that. So you can find those, and because of the fact that there's a limited ability to meet face-to-face, they actually encourage you to they'll lower the rate, frankly, to join, because they want to encourage more members to subscribe during a time when maybe you're not going to get the same benefit you would during a normal year. So look for those things, and guess what? If you're looking for something like that and it doesn't exist, create it, because there's probably someone just like you that's looking for the same thing. I can't tell you how many times I look in my neighborhood and we have different groups. We have different business groups that popped up. We have different oil and gas groups that popped up. We have job seekers groups that have popped up. We've had all these different social media groups that have popped up inside Facebook or inside these other forums that have encouraged conversation and encouraged people to kind of reach out and meet their neighbors. So if something like that doesn't exist, create it. But let's just talk about any kind of event you're going to go to, even if it's an online thing. Often, there's going to be a list of attendees. They're either going to register in advance, or they're part of the guest list, they're part of the speakers. There's usually some sort of list of people you can find. If you know who's putting on the event, reach out to that person, ask them, hey, who's coming to your networking event next week, whether it's in person or online. This obviously works better in person, but the structure is still the same. Go talk to that person who's hosting the event, ask them if they can share anything with you about those guests, and then you can be prepared to go meet those people and shake their hand when the event starts, or whatever the case may be. It's just like an interview right now. Now, a lot of people don't necessarily think of interviewing as a networking opportunity, but to me, it's the best networking opportunity, because when do you have permission to just talk about yourself? Okay, you have guided questions that are meant to elicit information about you, so you get to actually talk about yourself. Now, there's that fine line. You need to be humble in an interview so you can attract people to you, but in the same sense, you get to talk about yourself. So use the same research method. Just like before you go into an interview, you're going to research people you're speaking with. You're going to find commonalities with them. Before you go into a networking event, research the attendees from the companies you're excited to meet. Then go look them up on social media, find some commonalities. So when you go up to Jane, you can say, hey, Jane, I see that you're the VP of marketing for so-and-so. Or Jane, aren't you the VP of marketing for so-and-so? Yeah, I am. Hey, my name is Tony Martin. I've been really impressed with your background, frankly. I looked at it. You went to Harvard Business School, and how did you do that from being a Marine? And I mean, you can just find commonalities. And guess what? People will start talking about themselves. And when people start talking about themselves, that gives you an opportunity to listen, build some trust, build a relationship, and then when the pendulum swings back to you, you can then talk about yourself. But make sure what you're talking about is relevant to what the person wants to hear, especially if you're trying to get something, I say quote unquote, from that person, but really you're trying to get their time. Because the goals from a networking event are, 1, to get a job if you're looking for a job, 2, to impress the person you're speaking with, and 3, to impress them enough that they're going to introduce you to somebody else in their network. Because so many times when you go to a networking event, nobody in that room is hiring what you're looking to be hired into. However, somebody in that room knows somebody who knows somebody that can lead you to the position. So if your goals are clear going into a networking event, then you're going to set yourself up for success by trying to figure out how to reach those goals. So your goals shouldn't be, I'm just going to go, I'm going to eat some food, I'm going to have 3 beers, and then I'm going to move on and leave. No, your goals need to be making an impression, because you're selling something. And whether you believe it or not, when you go to a networking event, when you're interviewing for a job, you're selling yourself and your ability to articulate your points of view, your ability to read the room, read the body language, read if somebody's leaning into you or trying to get away. You need to figure out how to do all those things. And you need to have that self-awareness and those social skills to figure those things out. And if you've been following me on Instagram, you know social skills and self-awareness are 2 emotional intelligence traits that you need to harness and hone in on to be really good at networking. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Remember, after a networking event, it is always important to follow up, whether you're interviewing or whether you're actually attending something. You want to follow up after the interview, okay? Now, I'm a big believer that you're supposed to follow up immediately the next morning, because let's just say something. You go to a happy hour event, you guys are having a couple of beers, you're having a good time, you're enjoying each other's company, and then what happens? Tomorrow goes by, the next day, and before you know it, it's been a week. Do you really feel that same kindred spirit you felt with that individual you talked with a week ago? No, it's died because the moment is past. So you want to take advantage of that moment. So you want to make sure that when you follow up with them the next day, that you have something well written to say. Hey, thanks so much for your time yesterday. It was really interesting learning about this about you. You know, I always find sports. I'm a Red Sox fan. I'm a Patriots fan. I'm from the Northeast, so don't judge too much. Leopard can't change his spots. But I always try to find something that's unique to fall back on, so they remember who I am too, because chances are they've met more than just me last night. So make sure you try to follow up with them immediately. That goes for interviewing as well. I've always said this: follow up with everybody you've interviewed the next day and CC your recruiter on every single one of those emails, and make sure every email is personalized and not a canned generic email of, hey, it was so good to meet you yesterday, I appreciate your time. That gets you nowhere. That's just as valuable as doing nothing, in my personal opinion, unless they want something from you. Then it might be beneficial to open the door to start figuring out what the value proposition is in that relationship. So remember, 3 goals for networking. 1, you want to get hired. 2, you want to make a strong impression on those you're visiting with. And 3, you want to make a strong enough impression that they extend to you another opportunity to meet somebody else, okay? So next we're gonna go into some common interview questions and mistakes. Now here's something unique. Again, then we'll go to our Q&A. Yesterday on LinkedIn, I got a lot of questions. So I have a lot of questions ready to go. But as always, I prefer to take live questions from the people who are taking the time to watch me right now. So queue up those questions. But also, if you've had a really difficult interview question for this segment, feel free to type that in as well. And I'll add that question and I'll tell you how I would answer it. So, so feel free to write that as well. So first of all, now, for me, here's some common interview questions that you're going to get in an interview. Now, here's one you're always going to get, 100% guaranteed. When the interview is over, you are going to be asked, do you have any questions for me? Now, there is a right way to answer this, and there is a wrong way to answer this, okay? The right way to answer this is to have a question that's personalized for that individual, because chances are you might do 2 or 3 interviews in the same day. And if you do this, you're going to have 3 opportunities to ask questions. And I promise you, each one of those people you speak with are going to talk after the interview sessions and say, hey, what did he ask you? Or what did she ask you? And if you asked all 3 of them the same question, you are gone, most likely. They are not going to be impressed, because what were you doing? Were you testing them to make sure Sally's answer was the same as Mike's, which was the same as Reggie's? I mean, why didn't you just ask that first question? So what you don't do is you don't ask the same question to everyone, okay? You think about who you're speaking with, and often in an interview process, there's a hierarchy. There's a movement about it, if you will. Usually, if the schedules allow, you typically talk to the more junior person first, maybe just the recruiter, then you'll talk to the hiring manager, and then you might talk to the hiring manager's boss, something like that. So if I'm talking to the recruiter, I'm probably talking about company culture. Hey, I saw in your background, my question for her or him, I see in your background you've been here for 3 years. Why have you stayed? You know, what do you enjoy about it? How have you guys coped with COVID-19? Cultural stuff is probably a pretty good question for the HR rep. Then you move on to the hiring manager, and the hiring manager is going to have different concerns. They're going to want to know, can you fit into my team? Are you going to help me meet mission? Are you going to help me reach our target goals for a department? Things like that. So I might ask that hiring manager questions about, well, what are your biggest struggles? Or if I came into this role tomorrow, what would you think would be my biggest struggles to get up to speed? Or what are my weak points? Or things like that. Or what are your biggest headaches as you move forward? You could even say, use part of the interview with that hiring manager where he gave or she gave you some information, and then you're able to turn it into a question of, hey, you know, we were talking about how you're upgrading your system into this system. I've had some experience with that. Here are some pitfalls that I came across. Have you seen those same pitfalls yet, or those same mistakes? Bottom line, you're building credibility. You're solving. Your question is actually showing you have knowledge and solving their problem. Your question actually really isn't a question. It's an opportunity for them to go, oh, whoa, let me ask you some more questions and be intrigued more. So know who you're talking to. If you're talking to the VP of the department, they might be more impressed with budget questions, or, hey, you know, I think you guys have had a layoff recently. Have you lost 15% of your workforce, or you've lost 20% of your revenue because of COVID-19? How are you guys handling that? How are the stresses like? Things like that will show that you're in tuned to those right levels of the department who you're trying to speak with. But I can't tell you how often I've heard the question. I say that a lot. I gotta stop saying that. I can't tell you. I don't like saying that. So if I ever say that, feel free to give me like a like or something. I don't know. And you can just tell me I'm saying it. But I often hear people say, well, you know, they just ask questions that are curiosity questions, but don't show any time or research. You could have asked those questions to anybody. Or they don't say that you understand the challenges that you're about to undertake if you take the role. So make sure, again, that those questions are focused, but you're always going to get those questions. Use them to show, use it to show that you empathize with the person you're speaking with, and you understand the struggles they're going to go to, and you can be a problem solver, not just someone that's going to be someone that's continuing to add questions and problems to the mix. Next question that you're going to get often in an interview is, hey, what's your biggest professional accomplishment that you're proud of? Now, this is a chance to brag on yourself. So that's good, kind of. Because remember what we always say, and I hate those, you know, those emphatic statements, those statements that are absolutes, but we often say you're humble, you're bragging on yourself on the resume. In your resume, you show arrogance. In the interview, you show humility. Because people are attracted to humility, but they don't know they're attracted to humility until they're talking to that person, that you want to show different sides of your personality in an interview. So If during that professional accomplishment question, you're discussing, well, this is what my team did and I was able to lead them, but you want to use, you want to kind of avoid the words of me and I, and you want to talk more about the team of we, and you can always flavor in, well, I was able to lead our team into this or into that. But you want to make sure that when you're doing those sort of things, you're leveraging your team's accomplishments and your leadership versus you did all these things. Because again, maybe you're being promoted or hired into a role that requires you to be a leader, and you're no longer going to do all those things. You're going to lead people in doing those things. And the person that's hiring you wants to be sure you can lead people with the same passion as you can do. And there are doers and there's leaders, and there's some people in this world that just prefer to be doers, and there's some people who prefer to be leaders. And there's nothing wrong with either one of those camps, but when you're hired into a company, they need to figure out which one of those camps you belong into. So next question that gets you in trouble during an interview. What's your dream job? That's a question I've asked a lot. And the answer is this job. This is my dream job, or something to that effect. You want to be sure that you don't start talking about the person you're interviewing with, their job as your dream job, because they might just see you as a threat versus someone that they're excited to work with. And they might see you as trying to gun for their job. So certainly be sure you avoid that kind of question or that kind of answer, but make sure it's about, what you're doing now, or how this job relates to your dream job, or maybe how this job can help you get your dream job. But make sure that you're sensitive to the person who's asking you the question. Walk me through your resume. That's a question you're going to often get during an interview process, and one that you can just destroy relationships with. I have gone through a 45-minute walkthrough with someone's resume where I said, hey, walk me through your resume. I see you've been working for 10 years. And 10 years took 45 minutes because I had to hear every single story about every single thing, half of which wasn't relevant to the job they're being hired into. So when you're walking through your resume, make sure you're landing on the high points that are relevant to the job you're applying for. If you used to be an engineer and now you're a salesperson, and you've been a salesperson for 6 years and you're applying for a sales job and you're interviewing for a sales job, well, maybe you glaze over the 10 years of engineering experience, but you focus on how you figured out you wanted to be a salesperson. Because, when I was describing things to the clients, I really figured out that I had a stronger passion for working with the clients than I did for solving the solution. And because I had the engineering knowledge, I was able to frankly solve the problems. But really, my focus has always been client focused, and that's really what sales is. And that's how I found a passion for sales, which led me into my past job, which I've done for the past 6 years or whatever. Another question, why do you want to work for us? Easy question, you're going to get it. It better not be, I want to work for you because you're a good company, because I've heard you're a good company, because I know you're a good company, because I understand you're a good company. That is the lamest answer in the world. I understand you have great benefits. Okay, well, that's not part of our mission or our vision. Why do you want to work for us? Why are you passionate about working for this company right now in this role? You need to figure out why you're specifically excited about that opportunity, not why it's beneficial to you to have a job there, which is often how we answer that question. We answer that question saying, well, I don't really know how we answer the question, but we say it in the sense that I just need a job and you guys are hiring and I'm excited because you called me back. Doesn't matter what you said, but that's often how it comes out. Unless you can hark back to their mission, their vision, their core values, and how those things resonate with you, and how whatever their product or service is something you've been passionate about your whole life, or since you've been an adult, or realistically at some point in your life, you've seen the value or the benefit of that. So those are the little things. Hopefully those questions will help you as you start interviewing, because the market is picking up. I do want to give you a quick update before we get into Q&A. So let me just say that real fast. Q&A is coming up. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in. I will get to each of the live questions first, and then but I always have questions I've answered for my clients throughout this week, and I'll get to those questions as well. But I got a question recently about the unemployment insurance, and is that federal $600 extra, what's the latest on that? Well, as of this morning, it still has not been approved to be extended. I don't think it will be. Democrats want to extend it and Republicans don't. And I can just leave it at that. I'm not going to get you into their psyches as to why one or the other, because then perhaps my biases will show up, and I prefer just to keep my bias out of it and just let you know that there's two debates going on right now in the House and the Senate. And right now, there has been no traction on steps either way. Just kind of like what we talked about last week with the bills in the Senate and the House. There's been nothing new to discuss. All right. So with that, let's start getting to our questions. And again, let me just do this, because if I don't do it, you might forget. Make sure you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you like the Q&A section more than every other part of this program that I do weekly, or I should say twice a week, once on LinkedIn, once on Facebook, you can always go to YouTube. You can check it out there. You can skip ahead 15 minutes and you should land somewhere about the Q&A, and I'll always have this little ticker up there while we're doing the Q&A, so you know if you didn't scan far enough, you keep on going. But if you like the Q&A, that's probably the best place for you to check it out, because I handle a lot of questions. I try to weekly. So Sal on LinkedIn yesterday asked, what are my thoughts on teleworking and how do you measure success of teleworkers? Now, this was an interesting question because I haven't heard of it or thought of it before, but I really was able to reflect on it last night. And I think it's very role dependent. Okay, so there's certain jobs that are seamless if you're teleworking. However, you have to know what kind of person you are. You have to know if you're an introvert or an extrovert. Do you get energy from being in the office and working with a bunch of people? Or do you prefer to be a lone wolf and have no one bother you in the office? Because at some point, whether you're one or the other, often after you're home for 5, 6 months, 1, 2 years, you realize you kind of miss that team dynamic. So first of all, if you're contemplating working from home as a permanent basis, make sure you know what kind of personality you are and what kind of environments you thrive best in. Those would be motivational type questions you would see on an interview. What kind of environment do you work best in? Now, next, you got to figure out a way to assess your goals. Okay, there's been lots of discussion this year about how companies have had to reassess their company and corporate goals once COVID-19 happened, which makes perfect sense, right? I mean, we had this great economy, and now our economy's kind of shifted dramatically to be a very weak economy because of an exterior force on the economy. Now, the underlying conditions are still very strong, but until demand comes back, there's not going to be much of an economy to get excited about. So with that, you need to make sure that the goals that you're setting for your team members who are now teleworking, even if they weren't teleworkers, you still have to make sure that those KPIs are realistic. And maybe you have to change them. I know that sales individuals used to have certain numbers they had to hit every single month with bringing in sales, but maybe now it's more about meetings they have to have, or contacts they have to have, or whatever, fill in the blank, but there has to be you have to shift the KPIs. Then maybe when it comes to your workforce is now working from home, maybe those KPIs are more around response rate. Hey, I emailed you at 9 a.m. and it took you until 2 in the afternoon to get back to me. And I get that if I was in the office, I would have just 2 p.m. is acceptable because I could have walked by your cubicle and I could have tapped and said hello, and you and I could have talked. But if you're not available to do that, which if we're all working remotely, we can't, you need to be able to have a better response rate. You need to have these honest conversations with your teammates too and your subordinates so that they understand what's expected of them. You can't just change the rules tomorrow either. You can't say that for the past 6 years, it's been okay to respond to me in 1 day, and now today I expect you to respond to me in 1 minute. You've got to say, hey, team meeting, I want to talk to you a little bit about this topic of response rates. Here's our new expectations as we're all working from home. You need to make sure you set those level sets expectations. So you can always measure response rate, quality of work. You can, if you're working with teleworkers, you can measure the quality of work. You can make sure that the quality of work is getting better or is at least the same. So certainly do that. Hopefully that helps Sal a little bit out in California. If you like any of these answers, feel free to give a thumbs up, because I always like getting that, because I'm a words of affirmation guy. That's what I like. So thumbs up make me feel good. And we'll move on. And this is actually, so this week I've been working with a lot of senior people and their resumes. So when I've been working with those senior people, there's just a lot of mistakes. I won't say mistakes, but there's a lot of pitfalls that senior people, I don't mean senior as an old, I mean senior, you have 20 years of experience and you've been doing something, or maybe you're in the VP or executive level. What are some common mistakes that I'm seeing? I am seeing a lot of resumes that I'm working on the individual is working so hard to make sure that their bullet is well constructed in terms of a sentence that they fill in a whole bunch of other words that don't matter. For example, a bullet should start with a verb. If it's a previous accomplishment, it should be a past tense verb. Regarded as a subject matter expert. Continue it with the accomplishment, which led to a 15% growth in productivity in 2019. That's a pretty good bullet. Now, if it ended up being 2 or 3 words onto the second sentence or line, then I'd figure out how to cut some words off. But see, executives struggle with this because it goes against all of their training. Executives and senior level employees are used to being professionals in verbal and written communication. So it goes against their being to try to write a sentence fragment and make it work. But we as recruiters want to see sentence fragments. I'm telling you this. We don't want to see a book. We don't want you to say, this is what I did, thus, as a result. Like, that's a bunch of characters. Just say, this is what I did, comma, which affected this, or whatever the case may be. So I see a lot of senior people make that mistake, and they've done so much that they really struggle picking what's relevant, because everything's important, right? But not everything's important for the job you're applying for. So you need to be able to pick that. All right, Russ would ask, how would you answer the interview question, are you a person who works harder or works smarter, and why? That's a really interesting question, Russ. I like that question. So I personally, I guess I'd have to know what my culture was. Right now, for me personally, I would much rather work smarter. I don't want to work harder. I was a Marine for 9 years. I worked hard for 9 years. I go to the gym in the morning every day. I work hard at the gym. I don't want to have to work smarter or harder. And then we used to have an expression in the Marine Corps too. And that expression was, we're either going to be smart or we're going to be strong. And that was meant we're either going to do it right the first time, or we're going to just work out until we understand how to do it right the first time. So for me, doing something harder or working harder is an example in my lifestyle or my background of not getting it right the first time. So that's how I would answer that question. I would try to avoid being in the middle. I think the tendency is, well, I kind of like to work, I'm just kind of bold. It depends on the situation. Doesn't help me. Honestly, that interviewer who's asking you that question, Russ, is looking for you to answer it a specific way. And for you picking the middle of the road, you didn't make yourself more marketable. I would much rather make you less marketable because you said why you believe what you believe than sticking in the middle, which won't help you at all. And if all of your questions are in the middle, I promise you they will not move forward with you in the interview process, because if that's the first question they're asking you or a question they're asking you, there's other questions that are trying to pit you from one extreme to another or from the left to the right. And if you keep walking down the middle, they're not going to know who they're hiring, which means it's not very authentic and they're not going to want to hire you. All right. Thanks, Russ. Great question. Any other questions, feel free to ask them. We're going to go with Andre from Brazil asked, I'm applying, Andre from Brazil is looking for expat roles in the US, and our company's hiring them right now. That was Andre's question. Andre, truthfully, so being in the HR world in the past, hiring expat roles has always been a struggle, right? Because you have to justify why you're hiring an expat over a US citizen. Now, when you, or whatever nationality, French citizen if you're in France, or Spanish citizen if you're in Spain, you have to justify why this expat has these unique skills. And right now, during a pandemic where unemployment is so high, there's a whole bunch of people that are probably available that can do the same thing that you might be able to do, unless you are the world-renowned fill in the blank. Then perhaps you have a shot. But overall, it's going to be pretty tough for you to break that mold, unless you have some unique skills, especially during a pandemic like that. So I hope that helps. But I'm certainly not the expert when it comes to expat roles. Next, so there's often a thought that, you know, college students are going to be looking for about 1 to 4 months for a job before they get a job. I've helped a lot of college students this past summer out so far, and hopefully I can help a lot more because I really enjoy working with college students. But then, what's the expectations for how long an executive should be looking for an opportunity? This question has some schools of thought. So the old school of thought was pre-COVID schools of thought. There's no post-COVID because we haven't been there yet, and there's no during COVID because nobody analyzes stuff in the moment. They look past their historical data. So there's no historical data to answer this question accurately for today's situation. However, the typical rule is that if you make $100,000, it's probably going to take you about 6 or 7 months to find a job, and then you can add a month for every $10,000 you make. Now, obviously, this is not a hard and fast rule. If you make $250,000, I don't necessarily expect it to take you 2 years to find a new job. But I do expect you to have to really work hard to find and network your way into those opportunities if you're not well networked. Now, again, this kind of rule is if you're not very well networked. But a lot of people who are in those senior level roles, they're on different boards, they run in different circles, they have different peer groups that have opportunities that they're able to tap into and discuss. So I kind of believe that it just depends on your position. But also be sure that you're not just looking in one industry. If you've always been in one industry your whole life and you're 30 years into your career, it is going to be difficult to kind of move to a new industry. But if you have a history of 10 years in this industry and 10 years in that industry, then by the time you get to your 21st year and you've done 2 industries behind you, a company's going to be more open to maybe allowing you to be in their industry because you have a history of making it work in other industries. Plus you bring that fresh perspective that maybe that no one else on their team has. Okay, so with that, I'll answer one more quick question. If you have any live ones, feel free to shoot them in. I'll make sure I get them before I close out. But Zoom dress, if you are interviewing on a Zoom interview, what should you wear? What is the protocol? I've talked about dressing for interviews in the past, but what do you dress for when you're going to a Zoom interview? So I have a school of thought, and I guarantee there's a whole bunch out there. So this answer, I might just say, if you agree with me, do what I agree. But if you don't agree with me, I don't think you're going to hurt yourself. I believe, because I analyze everything, it's easier for you to put a suit and tie on and sit at your home office than it is to justify sneaking out of your current office to go downtown, to put a suit and tie on, to go walk into a face-to-face interview and tell them why you think you're qualified to be an executive or whatever the case may be. Now, certain senior level roles. But that being said, I can also see it the other way, that it's more casual because now there's a screen between us and maybe a suit and tie is over the top, even if it is for a high level role. I can tell you, I can see it from both sides. I have interviewed CEO candidates with the board of directors on the Zoom call pre-COVID because the board was over in Europe and this was for a US CEO. And I'll tell you, 4 out of the 5 candidates didn't wear a tie. But I'd be willing to bet if they walked into that boardroom, they all would have wore ties. So there must be some philosophy out there that I just haven't picked up on yet. But I think it's a respect thing. Now, I will tell you, they did hire the guy without a tie. So the tie didn't make a difference. So don't overthink this too much. But at the end of the day, my general feeling is that if you be expected to wear a tie every day, then you better wear a tie in the interview. If the culture is not a tie-wearing culture, then a sports jacket is probably just fine. But my general feeling for interviews is you always wear one level up, one level above what you're supposed to wear day to day, or what you expect your the people who are interviewing you to wear. That doesn't mean you're going to put a 3-piece suit on if they're going to wear a suit and a tie. Just put a suit and a tie on. Don't think the vest gets you too much, but in general, those are kind of my thoughts. So I hope everyone enjoyed this. If you like this, please like it. Please share it with anyone you think in your network that can utilize it and benefit from it. Again, please be sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Check out all my content over there. Follow me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. And as always, if you or someone in your network needs help getting a job, reach out to me so I can help show you how to get the job. I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for your time. Bye.